Hey, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. Today is Wednesday, October 2nd, 2024. It is 4 p.m. We're going to get started with our special city council meeting. This is a community center design workshop. We have some consultants here that have met with the public and have heard from council members and have come up with some preliminary concepts. Today we're going to hear about those and then give some direction. And towards the end of this workshop, we will have an open opportunity for members of the public to share some thoughts as well. So I'm going to go ahead and call our meeting to order. It's 4 o'clock. Madam Clerk, would you please call roll?
Councilmember Estrada?
Here.
Councilmember Carwin?
Here.
Councilmember Sobek?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Dinas?
Here.
And Mayor Zimmerman?
And I'm here, thank you. I'm going to ask one of our Parks Commissioners, Bill Ackerman, who is here, if he wouldn't mind leading us in a flag salute. Thank you, Bill. All right, thank you, and thank you, Commissioner Ackerman. All right, we're going to move on to our item 4, discussion, and in 4.1 is Menifee Community Center Schematic Design Workshop. I see our Deputy City Manager, Rebecca Kramer, is at the podium to introduce the item and help shepherd us with the presentation. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mayor, council members of the public that have joined us today. We're pleased to have an opportunity to welcome you to today's workshop to discuss the design for a future community center, which would be located on the property transferred to the city just this last year from the County of Riverside for the development of a community center, a public amenity located on La Piedra and Menifee Road, adjacent to our Menifee Public Library. Design of the community center was included as part of our capital improvement program plan for this year. And in January, we issued a professional services agreement for architectural design and engineering services to TSK Architects. We're pleased today to have from TSK joining us and leading today's workshop, Bill Dennis, the principal on the project, as well as Daniel Hidalgo, our senior designer. They're going to be providing you with an overview of the community input process as well as design, and allow for an opportunity to receive input from you as well as the public regarding the proposed schematic designs and facility massing at this phase. Following today's workshop, we will be proceeding to the next phase of the design development process, where we'll be talking more specifically about our structural elements, architectural design, materials, landscaping. There'll be more specifics on the preliminary engineering cost estimates, as well as the potential for phasing of the project over time. So following this next phase, there will, of course, be part of that process additional opportunities for council and community input, with the final design coming forward for review and approval in the early summer of 2025. Once we've completed that design process, staff will be working to identify funding, project funding sources as part of our long-term capital plan for actual construction sometime in the future. So with that, I'm going to turn the time over to Bill Dennis with TSK to lead today's workshop. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Dennis.
All right, thank you, Rebecca. Thank you to the mayor and city council for having us today, and having the opportunity, and also to the public at large for having the opportunity to present our progress on this project. I recognize some faces from our community workshop that happened during pre-design, and we really value your feedback and really wish to incorporate that as we move into the design development process. The goal of today's meeting, you'll see, similar to what you see on the screen now, are 3 white box models of our massing options. In the future slides, you'll see more color and materiality, but we would like to reiterate that what we're really looking at today is feedback on the overall architectural language of the structure, the building as it sits on the site, and that moving into the next phase of the process is where we start to get more specific with materiality and building systems and color palettes and things of that nature. Jumped a little too farther. A little bit about where we are now. Right now we are at the tail end of what we call the schematic design phase, where a lot of things are still in diagram A lot of things are still being developed architectural system-wise as it relates to the feedback that we've got from community, Parks, Rec, Trails Commission, and in the program that we've developed thus far. Again, reiterating that one of the most important things that we end schematic design with is an architectural language and a massing of the building. In the next phase, design development, is where we start to talk about, you know, a lot of those like fun building systems and materials and in color palettes and of that nature. How we got to where we got as it relates to the massing that you'll see in the future, you know, I want to go back and just reiterate that, you know, we had some great engagement with the community, which started with our survey, which was done digitally and in paper format at many events around the city. We were able to gather a large amount of surveys. I think 272 ended up being the final number that we got. And it provided a lot of valuable feedback about the direction of the program of this building and what ended up inside the space. And we ended up finding that there is quite a large contingent of the community that wanted to see support for the visual and performing arts, as well as meeting spaces and storage spaces for clubs and groups around the city. From that, we take the program and we take what the community's input, and we came up with adjacency diagrams to start seeing how the building and elements of the program would relate to each other. And so this what you see on screen now is not specific to any general location of items, but it really just to show how things would relate to each other as we move further into the schematic process, and we get a little bit more detailed then. So we take this adjacency diagram and we work out little particulars, and we end up going through an iterative process with the city's project team where we work on different orientations of these spaces in actuality, but absent of wall systems and things of that nature. So we can start to see more specifically about how certain rooms and certain activities within the space would interact with each other. You know, you can see there's a grand lobby option as well as smaller lobby options with more space. And as we went through that iterative process, we had the two on the left and we ended up on the one that you see in color there on the right, showing a grand lobby with support space for the visual and performing arts. But it's also flexible enough not to make the programming there so narrow that it sits empty while you're waiting for a play or something of that nature to be sent in there, as well as plenty of room for lobby for art space, another display aspect of, you know, in our survey, so that there wanted to be a lot of public art opportunities in there. And with that, I'm gonna send it over to our designer who will talk about how we got to our site diagramming and massing.
Thank you, Bill. As you can see here, we created a volumetric representation of that diagram that we showed in our previous slide, and then we sought to locate it on our site. The orientation you see now was the ideal one to maximize the number of parking that we could place on site, which was an important aspect that we wanted to be able to address when locating this new community center. While at the same time, this same kind of rotation creates larger outdoor spaces that could be used off of that kind of greenish volume there would be the conference rooms and ballroom. It gives a more usable outdoor space that can be adjacent to that, as well as on the opposite side of the building, while at the same time not turning our back to our neighbors, our residential neighbors to the north of the building, giving us a little bit more breathing room between those two uses. That angle also makes it easier for emergency service vehicles to reach that north side of the building. So really, after trying a couple of different orientations on the site, this turned out to be the ideal one. Here we can see a little bit more developed floor plan of the building. As you can see in that previous diagram that we were showing, really most of the program lives off of that central lobby. That lobby taking up an important part of the building and really becoming like the heart and soul of the concept. So to what would be the right on this image, we have 3 meeting rooms, conference rooms that can open up into one larger ballroom, really giving the community a flexibility of uses, right, in a variety of types of events, ranging for smaller community classes or a large type of community event that can then connect to the exterior as well. And then on the left side of the building, more in the purple color, we have that performing and visual arts space that can also be flexible when there isn't an event in town or if there's not a performance being had, that can also be used in a flexible manner for different types of events. The administrative portions up in green, more towards the back of house, as well as warming kitchens to support those events, and of course restrooms and exercise studio, which was also an important program element that the community wanted. Now, I'm going to walk you through three massing options that we've brought to you today. And again, I want to emphasize the massing portion of it. So please, we're not going to get too much into materiality here. Everything shown here in terms of materials and color palettes is only for reference. They will most likely change in design development, when we will end up making decisions on that. What we really want to lock in today is getting an idea and a direction for the volume, the massing, the architectural language that this building is going to have. So in this option, we can see here, starting with the south view, that top image there, the main entry. In the center, we see the entry to that main lobby, which is emphasized by a louver system, a shade system, a canopy system that marks that entrance, as well as another sun protection element above it that kind of marks the entrance of the lobby between those two volumes. To the right of that, we can see what we're creating is we wanted natural light to be an important aspect of the building and be able to enter and illuminate these spaces naturally. So we've created a light shelf where sunlight can bounce off of that shelf and enter indirectly into these spaces without creating glare or spotlighting. Those systems would have, again, a shading system. So in the case that there's a presentation or a class going on in these spaces, they can be closed and darkened. But we want to emphasize then also that sort of a fin-like element, that awning that really has a horizontal line and marks that definition. And as you can see on the other two images on the bottom, it is a continuous datum, a continuous line that really ties together the entirety of the building. To the bottom left, on that southeast view, we try to incorporate certain elements like these vertical fins to the entrances to those conference rooms, tying into some of the architectural elements of the library that is on the opposite side of the parking lot on the site. That has some vertical fin elements as well, so tying in subtly to that kind of architecture as well. On this second option, it is very similar to that first option, but we introduce a few elements that make it a little bit more dynamic. Higher lobby entry, giving a little bit more prominence to that entry to that lobby with that facade, an opportunity there with that sun protection system that could be a perforated metal or things of that nature that could either be more of an artistic incline, you can incorporate some sort of an art element there, or just have it be more subdued and just allow dappled sunlight into that lobby space. As you can see, that large theater volume there gets a little bit more dynamic when we bring some of the lines of it forward and up, giving it a slight slant to that roof, right? And it makes it a little bit more of a dynamic element as opposed to that static volume that we had in that previous one. It does allow us for some very opportune places to place perhaps screens or signage with community information or what is being held there, what performances are upcoming, or just general information about the ongoing events in the building. Still, this one maintains mostly the same kind of strategies that we applied in the first scheme of allowing natural light into the spaces. And finally, this third option, what we tried to achieve in this one was tie more closely into the architectural language of the library. As you can see, both above the lobby entry and that first image, and on the bottom left, we have these canted, these sloping beam elements that protrude from the facade, which is something that is also occurring at the library, albeit in the library, they're steel structure. Here we're representing it as mass timber. But it is that same language. And then the incorporation of these shading elements, both in the bottom left image, in the bottom right image, and in the entry to the lobby. A trellis system, which is present also at the entrance to the library currently, providing some of that shade, dappled shade, and marking the access and the entry points to the building, but still reading as freestanding elements to that. You'll also note that both for example, on the south view, on the top image, both of the roofs of that right volume and the left volume are sloping inwards, similar to what occurs at the library, where you also have both of those sloping elements on either side of the library. So those would be our three massing volumes that we have for you today. I will turn it back, oh, here we can see them all. So if we want to have an open discussion here, or are we moving on to your next slide, or do we have open discussion now?
We have open discussion. The next slide is really just about what we're looking for to the next album.
Okay, so hand it over to Bill. Thank you.
Little formatting there, but just essentially a reiteration that the next phase is the design development phase, where we're going to take your comments on these three massing options, or one massing option if you really like one today, and recombine those into a new iteration of this, and hopefully it's one that we move forward to strongly into design development. And within there, we would start to select specific material options, specific color palettes, things of that nature. And so a lot of those fun architectural elements come in that side of design development. So just a moment to reiterate that what we would like feedback on today is the general language architecturally of the building. Any specific elements that you all like, anyone from the community, we take critique very well. So please give it to us, because it all ends up having a better iteration of this project afterwards. So I'll jump backwards just once again to the open discussion slide. It has all the options there for us to look at, and we welcome any questions and hope that we can answer them as best we can.
All right, thank you, Mr. Dennison. And again, at the end, we're going to take public comments too, so we'll probably hear a little bit about massing and some of their thoughts as well. So council members, do we have anything, or should we have them just proceed ahead? Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I have a couple questions. On slide 6, can we put up slide 6, please, Tech? We talked about the landscaping and the gated area behind. Were these decisions made for safety concerns for the fire department and police department to get back? You kind of alluded to that.
So in some ways, yes, the orientation of the building being slightly askew from what you see with the library that's next door to it, that gave us a few options in the back for having fire access to the rear of the building. Everything that's within the fire life safety code and the California building code, as well as opening up some opportunity for additional landscape to provide a buffer to the community that's behind us. If you have say there's a trade show going on within this community center, and it goes outside and I don't want to say it gets loud or rough or anything like that, but I mean, there's a sound buffer then between the community that's behind it. We had a nice conversation with some folks that were at the community workshop who lived in those houses just behind there, and we took that to heart, that we wanted to try and maintain that separation between these two uses.
Okay, makes sense. And
Can
then
I add to that?
Okay.
Yeah. I believe what you're also referencing what we can see there on the right of the image, what seems to be fenced off.
Right,
Is
that
correct?
too.
Right. That was also part of, with the executive committee that we've been working with on behalf of the city. It would be beneficial to have that as an area that can be closed off and then rented for outdoor events. If somebody wants to rent the conference rooms or the ballroom for an event and they wanted to have an outdoor component, then that gives them a very defined area that they can operate in and be more profitable as a rentable space for the city.
Okay, that sounds nice. And then my second question was, you mentioned in the front of the building, the prominent opening, and did you say there was going to be a screen where we can display performances or the activities or did I hear that right?
Yeah, go for it.
So that's still in discussion, and that's something that will be decided upon in design development. But we've created the spaces on that facade that will allow us to implement it if that decision is made. So there is space for that if we decide that it is an opportune decision to implement some sort of a video screen or an information board, things of that nature. There is a location to allocate that and place it on the building that would still feel coherent within the building, and it won't be an afterthought. But the final decision on that is yet to be made in design development.
Okay, thank you. And I look forward to hearing what the public has to think. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councilman Carwin's next.
Thank you. If IT could put up slide number 14, please. I guess I'm looking at the page numbers at the bottom left. There you go. So on this view, this is number 2, I think. All of the light colored, is that wood? Is that orange paint? What is that?
So again, if we could just reiterate that everything that's in color or showing any type of materiality right now is really just for reference and to highlight certain volumes on the building. there's nothing to say exactly what specific material that is right now. We would develop that in the design development phase.
Oh,
which
I
of
see.
course, which of course would come back to this council for feedback at that time.
Okay. And then, one thing I couldn't get a sense of, and are you looking for feedback on the use on the inside as well?
Not necessarily use of the inside. We presented that so we could show council how we arrived at the specific geometry or the floor plate of the building. Really what we're looking for feedback now is on the general massing that you see in the architectural expression on the site.
Okay, so today's more for exterior aesthetic rather than interior use.
Right, minus the materials and color at this time.
I see. So, and just as we go into the future on this project, one thing I'm not seeing is a lot of dimension correlating to sports usage on the inside. So as we get to that discussion, please keep that in mind. All right, so, but in this particular view, I know that we're not looking at color or material. What is that material representing in this picture? Or is it's just orange so you can see that that's the difference from the previous one?
Yeah, it's really to mark differences between those volumes and in availability for potential for materials. You know, these could be, you know, some sort of cementitious panel or metal panel that matches more closely to the library. You know, these are all decisions that we'll start working with the city's executive team to create more options and then bring back in the future.
All right, thank you, that's all I have.
Bob, it will not be baby poop yellow. All right, Councilmember Sobek's next.
I thought we were going to do the Menifee colors of bright orange and turquoise.
Thank you, Mayor. So I have a question also on number 6, on the way it's placed. How far away is that from the houses, that back part?
I believe the closest portion of the building, if I recall correctly, I can't have the exact number right now, but it should at least be 50 feet from that site wall, right? We have the 30 from
Yeah,
that.
there's, if you can imagine, if we were back on that side diagram, there's a wall that runs behind those houses there that separates them from the lot. There's an easement for a utility that's also in that corner that is a minimum 30 feet, and so we're never more than 30 feet. And I believe that back corner where the fencing in the fenced area is about anywhere between 40 and 50 feet.
Okay, all right. And then later on, we can discuss how we can use vegetation to have also additional sound wall. Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. On slide 7, where you have the map of the inside, can you tell me why you chose to put the offices in the back, where when people come in, they would need to be greeted, and I would think, like, we have a lobby here and we have somebody out here, they don't have to walk all the way to the back of the building.
Yeah, during conversations with the city, it was decided that the actual offices should be more towards the back, but there will be an information booth that will be staffed throughout the day. So when people walk into that lobby, there will be somebody to greet them and direct them to wherever they need to go and check them in. But just during discussions with a representative from the city, they felt that the most appropriate location for the offices should be that back. But there will be somebody, again, once you walk into the building, you will be able to see somebody that's staffing it and get information and direct it to where.
So it seems like to me, I don't know, I would think that they would be closer to staff and that it would be up towards the front of the building, so it just kind of surprises me. I can see where the kitchen and that kind of stuff is in the back, but I don't know, for me, it just seems like it should be up towards the front.
I think the vision for that area is where somebody who's, you know, either booking out space in the meeting areas would sit and reside to work on computer work and things that are maybe sensitive and that the public wouldn't want to have access to, or if they're booking out the visual and performing arts space. But that as we go through the interior design process, there definitely will be space at the front of that lobby in order to be used if there's a performance happening where a city staff member or a staff member of the production company could man that reception desk and be greeted and be checked in. And
Okay, it just seems like there would end up being 2 office places, one in the front, one in the back. So that's just something that I'm taking away from that, on that. And then on your, design on all three of them, I know when developers build houses, one of the things I've heard is they like the creativeness where you don't drive up a driveway and see a big garage door. And to me, on the south end, it looks like maybe we're driving up to see a big garage door. And so would there be something maybe I'm not seeing that could be more creative on that big wall?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I think, are you referencing the large volume of the theater?
Yes.
Okay, that might be a little bit misguiding in terms of the visual representation now, right? Because of the scoring, the line, the pattern that it has right now, I can see how it might be similar to a garage door. But yeah, we'll try our best to make it not look like a garage door. Once we have, in the next phase, when we're talking about materials and the patterning and the texture of that, yeah, we'll do our best to make it not look like a garage door, absolutely.
Okay, and one more question. So I know that the library has eaves as well, particularly facing the south and the southwest because of the heat and the sun in the afternoon. Did you take that into consideration with these windows in the eaves as well?
Yes, if you'll note, for example, on page 9, or that main view of option 1, we do have those eaves, those awnings on both the right and the left where we have those windows. So they won't be getting, they're far enough back, covered enough from that awning that they won't be getting direct sunlight. And that's why we have that sort of sloped shelf in front of them. So the sunlight, direct sunlight, will hit that shelf and reflect indirectly into the building. So it'll illuminate the space without getting that direct heat gain.
Okay, great. It's hard to tell, so I wanted to make sure I asked
I
that
agree.
question.
It is hard to look at and represent it, but also as we're developing these models in our design software, we actually run sun study models that are based specifically on the geography and the exact orientations of buildings so that we could place down to the degree the exact orientation that we would need to maximize efficiency with HVAC systems and things like that, and to reduce the amount of solar heat gain that we would get from the sun at any time of the year.
Okay, thank you for taking that into consideration. That's all my questions.
All right, next up is Mayor Pro Tem Dinas.
Thank you. Still on slide 7 here, you mentioned on the theater seating, I'm going to assume that it's sloped like most theaters would be, because you said that during the presentation that it'd be flexible enough for other events. But if it's sloped and has permanent seating like a theater, we're kind of limited as to what other events we could possibly have.
Correct. So the idea is not to have fixed seating. So the idea is that it could be retractable slope seating. So if there is a need for a theater performance or something that would need stadium seating, you can retract those and you'll have the slope seating. But when you need something that's flat, like if it's a conference or anything like that, you can put those away into the wall and it'll just be one open space. So that allows for different types of configurations as well in terms of theater. If it's more of an intimate performance and you don't need that slope seating, maybe you just need chairs like this, you can do a smaller sort of performance in that way. So it really gives them more flexibility to the space as opposed to having permanent sloped gradient stadium seating.
Okay, that's good to hear, because I think, how often there seems to be, it's a great idea for performances, but then when there's none, it sits empty and unused for a long time. But this allows it to be used for other purposes. I just want to make sure that I understood that correctly.
Yeah, we're trying to make flexibility the key when it comes to programming the space. Not only is it fiscally responsible as it comes to gathering as much program and activity as we can in one space without, pigeonholing yourself into, this could only be used for a musical performance or a play or something like that, but theoretically it could be used for a conference, it could be used for a meetup, it could become flexible in that, I don't know, maybe a pickleball court could be put in there or something like that at some point, but, even with all of our space, we're really trying to maximize the amount of flexibility that each of these spaces have. So that way you don't have 3 large meeting rooms that are sitting open all the time, because what we need to have is a language class in there once a week. And so each of those spaces are also dividable as well.
Oh, great. I appreciate that. That's great forward thinking and great use of space. So I'm excited about that. A couple other questions as well. Lisa took mine about the garage door. I was going to ask if it came with clickers, but I know that's not it anymore. The other thing is, it has open space above it. It's just a single story except for a theater. Was there any discussion about making a second floor and putting more meeting rooms? Because, my thought was, go off what Councilman Carwin talked about sports. If you put those meetings upstairs, we could have that open for some kind of, basketball, volleyball, that type of thing.
Yeah, so with the square footage and typical cost per square foot for this type of structure that we've seen in California, doubling the square footage by going with the second story within the budget constraints that we've been given for the design, our marching orders, that would be cost prohibitive, and we'd end up actually losing program in other places to try and make that happen.
Okay, well, I just make sure that we understood that, and that's why it's designed that way. Okay, that's all I got.
Thank you.
All right, all good questions so far. All right, Councilman Carmen's back in the queue.
Thank you. I just want to go back to, if you could put up slide 11, which has the 3 options altogether. And that south view, that's the one we're talking about. To me, it looks more like an airplane hangar than a garage door. But has there, I was looking at El Toro, the El Toro airplane hangars, something to create depth on that, whether it's slats or I would love to have like a mural, but that would get destroyed by the sun. Something to use that space instead of just having blank space there.
Yeah.
What's the thought on that?
So that's one of the troubles of showing just the massing and having just the massing being focused on, because we don't get to present the opportunities yet of what we see actually happening material-wise. In fact, prior to this presentation, we did have large murals showing as represented on some of those, that large volume space there. We're constrained because the theater requires to have a certain height to it. And as we develop that visual and performing arts space more, that volume might come down a little bit than
One
what's
thing
showing
I
now.
don't
Yep.
see represented here, and I don't know if this is coming in another phase, is the use of exterior space.
Yeah, so that
Like,
is
like a courtyard or a patio or something that you could put in front of that would create an exterior space.
Yeah, absolutely. That does come in the design development phase. As far as the site diagram goes, what we've seen in one of the earlier slides, it's very diagrammatic at the end of schematic. But in design development, we work with our landscape architect partners at EPT to develop outdoor opportunities like that. You could go as far as envisioning that wall being used to host a community movie event or something like that on it. But we are looking at materiality for it, whether that be opportunities to display information, either digitally or analog on there. Also looking at murals, and these are things that we would bring.
Oh,
to the
like a
table.
billboard or something on there?
Yeah, potentially, yeah.
Community billboard?
Yep.
Like a marquee?
Right, a marquee or a video board that, okay, this week, Hamlet, or next
Right.
week.
Hamlet, you went right to Hamlet.
But yeah, some sort of an information system that either digitally or statically can inform the community of the upcoming events and what's currently going on.
Yeah, that'd be great. Oh, man, that would be definitely a cool use of that. All right, thanks.
Councilman Estrada.
Thank you. On slide 7, it shows the performing arts area is about 1,024 square feet. 1,024 square feet. And what's the estimated seating capacity for that type of space?
Right now, we're developing that with partners for those telescoping seats to kind of tell us what the seating capacity might be for that. I believe in our initial studies, when we had less square footage, we were a little over 100 seats for that. And it's grown a little bit since that initial study that we took to the community workshop, and it could mean more. But we're also taking a look at this space to see exactly what it is and ends up. We're really concerned about getting all yours opinion on the volume of space that's outside. And in design development, this is our basis of design for the interior. And in design development, these things will get pinched and poked in here and there to become more specific to what the program ends up being. But to answer your question, our initial studies was about 125 seats, I believe.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir.
All right, and seeing no more from my council members, I'll just say, I think you guys have done a good job of, as far as the bulking, massing, scaling, all of that, trying to maximize, get as much space in there as you can. I also wanted to just throw a little comment of support for what you mentioned earlier about matching the library. I mean, to me, that's a no-brainer. If they're right next to each other, they should complement each other, so I would encourage that. So I think at this point, you guys can proceed ahead with any more presentation items. Otherwise, we'll take public comment.
That was it for us presentation-wise. Thank you.
All right, thank you both. Stand by because we may open it back up again for council discussion once we hear from everybody. We might have some need for your feedback. So with that, Madam Clerk, let me just ask, have we received any requests to speak on this item?
We do have requests to speak.
All right, before we call them, and have we received any correspondence on the item?
No correspondence.
All right, so let's go ahead and call our first speaker, please.
Mary Carnes, followed by Inez Miller.
Welcome, Mrs. Carnes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members, for giving me the opportunity to address you and speak on this issue. As a member of the Arts Council Menifee Board, I just want you all to know that we are very excited.
No, back. Just move
Back?
Yeah,
Okay.
you're too close to it.
Sorry.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah, that's better.
Is that okay? All right. But we're very excited about the facility and what it has to offer for the community, the flexibility of the meeting rooms and the ability to display artwork and the black box theater. It all looks so fantastic. I was going to bring up two items, which were, I think I have some support here, but I want to bring them up anyway to just make sure that y'all are considering these options. I'm wondering if there is going to be secure storage closets available for the use by qualified nonprofits like the Arts Council, the VFW, Rotary, the Vagabond Theater Group, and others. Having half a dozen or so dedicated 10 by 10 storage spaces would be incredibly helpful for storing meeting supplies like flags and podiums and audiovisual equipment, props and costumes, and more. This would be a great solution to avoid the inconvenience of transporting these items, as we do right now in our cars, and incurring the cost of a public storage unit, as many of us are currently doing. So if that could be a consideration, we would appreciate that. My second item is, again, about the appearance of the outside of the building. And I'm happy to hear that it's been discussed tonight. Looking at the rendering, I was sure that it was just the building exterior is the infant stages and only to show to scale, and that was confirmed today. And as you design the exterior of the building, please consider complementing the Menifee Library. This corner has the potential to be a beautiful space where people want to be. And by incorporating similar design elements from the library, such as the same colors and materials and landscaping, it will greatly improve the appearance of the entire corner's curb appeal and overall welcoming atmosphere. Just some of you are familiar with the villages that I have created at the Merry Christmas House. And one reason why I believe that people enjoy coming to my villages is because I made
Ms.
each
Carnes.
building.
Your 3 minutes are up.
Oh,
Yeah, if you can wrap it up, Mary, we'll
okay.
give you a little bit of
I
extra.
am so sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't even notice that. But please look at creating the exterior of our new community center as an extension of our beautiful Menifee Library. And thank you for your consideration and time.
Thank you so much. We appreciate your input. All right, next up, Ms. Miller, Mrs. Miller?
Followed by Joe Long.
No, wrong, Ms. Miller. And Ms. Inez Miller. Mrs. Miller, yeah.
Woohoo, 3 minutes, translating English to Spanish, first time. Professional artist, very active in Temecula City. I'm very excited. I belong here, Menifee. So let's see. The main thing is, and my concern is the parking lot, the parking structure. I don't know if they have considered a multi-level structure because there is no possible reason that it will fit that many people, and always flows to the my house residence, area or the parks around side. We have experience with the other events already. The next one is, yes, roadblocks construction there. I see 4 boxes, nothing artistic, nothing appealing on the artistic side. I mean, it can be a good start, but I don't think that we should rush to it. I don't know if the city has been considering other bids from other architects, no offense, but the thing is, if we're so excited, and I'm, oh my goodness, I'm for the visual arts. I'm mainly for the visual arts, and lighting will affect the artworks. Lighting will affect the artworks, and then if we can have a room or a museum style or gallery specific for the arts, that will be so nice, so needed. No hall that it leads to the restrooms, but an actually dedicated room that people can actually see, like a museum style. They can see and take in. It's a very, very good start, trying to bring the culture and the arts to our residents. It is a practice that it needs to be passed on in generations. And that's all I have. Woohoo, 1:22. Thanks.
Thank you. We appreciate your input. All right, and then who was next?
Joe Long,
Oh,
followed
Joe Long.
by Dina Gold.
All right. Welcome, Commissioner Long.
Thank you very much. My name is Joe Long, Planning Commissioner for the City of Menifee. For the design, if you look at the frontage, you see 3 different heights. So my first suggestion would be, actually for the front entrance, it should be the highest, not the theater. Should be the highest. Or either all 3 should be on equal height, or the front entrance should be the highest, just to show the attraction of coming in. So that's my one point. And also, I think for the front entrance, we really need a waiting area, a covered waiting area. People coming in, people coming out, people waiting for pick up. So we really need to have a place for people to wait comfortably. Yes. Another feature that I would like to see is we have, how about rooftop sitting area, activity area on the rooftop? That would be fantastic. And more outdoor activity areas, a little more outdoor activity area on the ground as well. So those are my suggestions. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Mr. Long. We appreciate that.
Dina Gold, followed by Anissa Williams.
All right, welcome, Ms. Gold.
Good afternoon, Council. One thing, trees. I just moved here. I've been here a year. More trees, please. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Welcome, Ms. Williams.
Hi. Nice to meet you guys. I'm Anissa Williams. I'm actually a GIS tech here. And I was super excited because I actually live here. But going off of what Bob said, I really do think something of a mural or something visually so our arts people can get involved, whether that's in the city, the schools, something to where it's not just performances, but visually our city kind of gets a sense of culture. Because right now, I don't see a lot of like sculptures or anything to like in parks to where you can sit, look at something beautiful, or look at a structure and kind of see, yeah, like this is Menifee. So I really do think that you guys should consider something more visual, something more, I don't know, unique to Menifee, so where we could kind of build our artistic community. Like, I'm sorry, I forget her name, but what she said, I think it would be a very good idea. And it would bring more children out, more elderly out, just something kind of like our community garden. I think elementary school kids did that mural, but I thought that that would be great to see. That was it.
All right, thank you so much.
No other speakers.
No other speakers. All right, so at this point, we're going to go ahead and bring it back behind the rail. Council members, it's open for any more discussion. I would like to have Mr. Dennis and Mr. Hidalgo be on standby here, because I think we did hear a couple of things, and maybe I was taking some notes, so if you don't mind, I'll remind you, and maybe you can give us a little feedback. First, we heard about having the potential for lockable storage closets for those users who repetitiously use the room maybe once or twice a week, and they're constantly schlepping their podiums and flags and things like that. Is that something that we can incorporate? Is there space? Is there somewhere that makes sense?
So yes, there is, and that has been part of the marching orders that we received from the city and our community workshop, as well as from the city's executive committee that we work with on a weekly basis for developing these. Just a reminder that the building as we know it right now is in its infancy. It really doesn't look like much like more than what you see on the front page of this at the moment. Any colors that we showed were strictly just to try and show a little depth and reference to the building. So to answer your specific question, yes, that is a prime.
Very good. Thank you. And those are, it's actually something that was suggested by our Parks Commission when they looked at this a while back. And now we're hearing from the public about it too. And so I think we just want to put that flag in the ground that it's something that I think a lot of us feel would be a good thing for those typical users. And we just don't want that to vaporize from the idea.
Yeah, no, and you'll see like in the next phase, the design development phase, which we've talked about a lot here in this presentation. What we'll bring back to council for workshop and as well to the community at large will be more specific interior floor plans that highlight a lot of those type of elements to the spaces.
Excellent. And then we heard about parking capacity. And so is the parking based on floor area ratio, square footage, we need to generate X amount of parking? Can you also talk about reciprocal parking with the library, just to help?
So our parking count is largely not only just a floor area ratio, but specifically the floor area ratio of specific uses and occupancies of the space. So for instance, for the visual and performing arts area, there's a certain formula that we use out of the building code that tells us how many we need specifically for that space. And then for the meeting spaces, that falls under a different type of occupancy. And that gives us our total number after we take the entire building into question. We've gone above the code required parking amount for this building. And under the direction of the city's executive committee, and we heard at the community workshop as well that during certain events there is an overflow of parking that goes into the neighborhood, and so we've really oriented our site, the building, to try and maximize the amount of spaces we can get in the parking lot.
Thank you for addressing that. We heard about the potential of rooftop gathering space. Tell us your thoughts there.
I can send it to the designer in a second. My first thoughts for those is that in order to have spaces up there, you need to make them fully accessible to every member of the public, and that often adds cost because you either have elevators there or you have some sort of way for people with disabilities to make their way up to those spaces, and so oftentimes they can become cost prohibitive in a project.
Okay, very good. Thank you for that. And then we heard also about having like murals and sculptures, public art, and also gallery space inside if we wanted to have our arts council putting on an art show or something like that. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so I'll go really quick just to say that the orientation you saw on one of the slides was a very large grand lobby, and that was with the idea that we wouldn't just have public art shown in hallways to restrooms where sometimes you see them in airports and things of that nature, but where we can have specific lighting designed to highlight members of the community's art, things of that nature, but also other opportunities, Daniel.
Correct, yes. We are studying the possibility of incorporating murals to the exterior of the building. Again, since we're in such an early stage, we're not representing that graphically yet because we didn't want to distract from the massing, right? Yeah. But yeah, in the future, you will see some options that will probably represent that on the exterior of the building. And again, as for the interior gallery, while we don't have programmatically a museum or a gallery per se, the idea is that the lobby is going to be such a grand space that it will have dedicated areas for public art to be incorporated with correct amount of lighting and space for it to be viewed.
Nice. I'm glad you're thinking of that. And it's great to hear from the public and hear their thoughts and suggestions. And so, I mean, this is the public's building, and so let's make it the best 100%. It can be. In the queue is Councilman Carwin.
Thank you. I think that not exploring the rooftop with a one-story elevator would be a missed opportunity. Because the idea of being able to do, I mean, the whole length of the building to do an outdoor taste of Menifee or something like that up there on a cooler night. I'm looking up really quickly here online. Everything I see says elevators cost between $50,000 and $100,000 per landing. If it's $100,000 to install an elevator in this building in order to get a whole second floor of an outdoor opportunity, to me that seems like an expense that we could add to it that would be worthwhile. Obviously, I would not support any kind of access up there that you couldn't get to by an elevator, so that would have to go along with it. But that's something that I would like to see maybe added to this project, or at least an option to include, just so we can see what that would entail. If it's going to add $1.5 million to the project, different story altogether. But if it's 100,000 or in that range, I think that might be an additional amenity that would add a second story to the building. Without adding a full second story to the building. And then I just want to reiterate my desire to have some sort of personality to this exterior design. I recall the words of the late planning commissioner, Earl Phillips. Whenever we designed a building, Earl Phillips would always say, I want my institutional buildings to look institutional. He wanted everything we built to look like a giant bank. Because he was a military guy and he wanted military buildings to look military. But without going too out on the edge of design, like designing it like a mission or something like that, if we're going to try to blend it in with the college and the library and everything in that region, I think something needs to have some personality over here. So as we get to the next phase of that, I'd like to see some use of the exterior here that made people go, I'm blindfolded, I'm in Menifee, when I take it off, as opposed to I'm blindfolded and I could be literally anywhere standing in front of this building. It would be another missed opportunity to not have that. So I'd like to see that maybe some sort of, Councilmember Sobek talks a lot about a place-making landmark where people can take pictures in front of, things like that, to show, like you're in Menifee, a giant M or whatever, something like, incorporating something like that into this, just some sort of Menifee-related personality to this building, I think would go a long way. And as far as things that I do like about this, I like the idea of the light shelf. The sun, as you can see, gets just insanely brutal, and if we can make that as indirect but useful as possible, I really like that idea. I'm not a fan of the metal, because it gets reflective, and you start creating like a Raiders of the Lost Ark kind of beam on people. So I do like the muted materials more with all of the sun we have. With the indirect light, that's fantastic. And then I'm not so sure about the cantilevered roof compared to the square roof. I don't know if we're losing space or if the upper edge is taller than the rest. So so option number 2 here, it looks like, so this lower corner is the same height as the other 3, that's just additional height?
Correct.
I see, okay. Yeah. So as long as we're not losing height with that, then that's an aesthetic that's fine by me. But that would be my comments on it. And I appreciate Commissioner Long coming and pointing out that rooftop, because that never even occurred to me until he said it. That was a great suggestion.
All right, next up is Councilmember Sobek.
Yeah, thank you, residents, for coming out, and thank you for sharing your thoughts today. I took a few notes as well. I kind of agree with Inez Miller, the 4 boxes. It's not really artistic. I know you're trying to probably also look at the library. I'm just kind of wondering if maybe, I look at that big, tall, the theater part, and I could see that having a wave. Just a simple wave that would give that some architectural design. It's a great place and a good start, as it's been mentioned. I did like what Mr. Long said about the entrance, that maybe it is just in the summertime. Where do you guys live? Where are you from?
Live in Los Angeles now, San Bernardino.
Okay, so San Bernardino, we get the heat in San Bernardino. Okay, just didn't know if a lot of times we get people from the beach area. So,
I wish.
but you know, what he mentioned about the entrance and maybe a greeting place, a place to stand. Often when I go to a theater, you're outside and just gathering and talking and waiting for the play to start. And I just would love to see maybe like an overhang or a little bit more shade there. So, and then Dina Gold, she mentioned more trees. Yes, always more trees. And I know you haven't even done the aesthetics yet and that landscaping, but I did like something that you said. You mentioned that wall could give an opportunity for an outdoor movie. And I could see that with a nice lawn area and an opportunity there for that. So I like that thought. So those are just my ending thoughts after I listened to everybody.
All right, next up is Mayor Pro Tem Dinas.
Yeah, regarding the rooftop, there's two concerns I have, and that was for the neighbors. Now you've got the noise issue and some privacy issues. So I don't know if there's a way to put up some privacy screening or something along that line so that, you know, they're not standing over at the edge there looking in the neighbor's backyard. Or if you get a large gathering in the evening, it gets noisy. The later it gets, the louder, the more the sound carries. So I'm concerned about that for our neighbors. Right now, we've got it all contained inside. There's no issue of sound and that type of thing. So I'd be hesitant to do that unless there's something that would satisfy the neighborhood there, that they feel that their privacy hasn't been interrupted.
I did want to ask if you can clarify, just so edification for everybody, there is a reason for the height of the performing arts or the black box theater portion, and maybe you could explain a little bit about how a proscenium might have a curtain or something like that. So.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, as we all know, the theaters have a lot of, there's a large technical component, and especially in lighting, so they need a lot of space, just roof height, to be able to accommodate all of that technology in terms of lighting, catwalks to be able to access that lighting, space for, I'm blanking on the word, but the curtains to go up in, basically. So there is at least it's a 45, 50-foot height, usually, for a theater space to be able to accommodate all that infrastructure.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Further along with that as well, just to add one more aspect of it, is the sound design of a theater, so that it can carry to the back with a fairly normal voice or high lift to the rear. So those type of design aspects, engineerings of the acoustics are very specific to the height of the.
Understood. Very good. Thank you. I'm glad you thought of that. All right. Next up is Councilman Estrada.
Yeah, we've talked about many times having a unique identity and adding it to our strategic plan. And I think, like Commissioner Long said and Councilmember Carwin mentioned, you know, a front patio, a grand entrance to highlight what makes this community center unique to Menifee. You know, when, as Councilman Carwin said, when you take off the blindfold, I'm in Menifee. Right. And Menifee needs that. We have a lot of neighbors who have a lot of personality. And like our GIS team member mentioned, who works with IT, Menifee needs that. So if we can incorporate, I know we're not talking so much about the colors or the materials so much, but maybe a front courtyard, which helps create a placemaker, a monument, and that's important because we want to highlight and let residents know, hey, when you're arriving here, this is a place of the arts.
So I think those are some good points, especially you know, making this wanting to be like a cultural icon of the city, a marquee project of the city. You know, this is exactly the type of feedback that we like to get at massing discussions like this, because it lets us know, hey, we can start taking these boxes and exaggerate them in certain ways or play with the geometry in certain ways. We all came into this profession as well because, you know, we're fans of the arts and visual arts, as well as the science of the engineering of these spaces. So feedback like that is fantastic, and it allow us to open ourselves up to a little more dramatic architecture in certain ways as well. With all the comments that we're getting on the exterior, I really can't wait to show you guys the next phase when we do have landscaping out. Yeah. EPT are great landscape architects. I've worked with them for many years, and they build and design beautiful spaces that create little sticky, intimate zones around areas, as well as broader zones that can host more public, you know, more, oh geez, I just lost the word here, higher attendance type things, like a movie on a big wall, but also little places where you can go to the library and bring your lunch over and find yourself under a tree, sitting yourself somewhere that's nice and shaded and, nice experience. So more to come. Can't wait.
All right, I think we were trying to end at 5 o'clock, and it is 5. So I wanted to just take a second to thank you both, Mr. Dennis, Mr. Hidalgo, for this opportunity to provide some feedback on the schematic design and at this stage, and I think you're on the right track, and really do appreciate that everybody
Can I make
came
one
to speak.
suggestion?
You can.
Are we going to have another workshop on this, or does this come back for approval? The reason I'm asking is because the next time we meet on this, I was wondering if we could make it joint with Planning Commission.
Okay, Rebecca might be able to help us.
We will have another workshop on this as we get further into the design elements.
Yeah, either have a meeting with Planning Commission before it comes to us, or make it joint.
And Parks, really, because they've been shepherding this thing all along.
I'd like to have their input instead of making them come to the podium, have them officially involved in the discussion, because that's kind of their job. I mean, we were leapfrogging them to get to this meeting here. I would like to have them be able to input along the way.
Okay, good suggestion.
I would second that.
All right, good. All right, so with that, I think we are there, and thank you again. It is 5 o'clock, and we're going to go ahead and adjourn, and then the council is going to be coming back in 15 minutes to start our closed session, and then at 6 p.m., we will have a regular meeting. So thank you, everybody, for being here.
Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.